who is joining us now live from the White House. We call him the Hogster. That's Hogan Gidley. He is the Deputy Press Secretary to President Trump in the White House, and he is joining us right now. Hogan Gidley, the Hogster. Hogan, good to have you with us, man.
I appreciate it, and thanks so much again for the nickname. Hopefully it'll catch on by the next time I come on the show.
We're going to get it on because it's a perfect nickname for you, and you have to understand, Hogan, a nickname on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Hogster, is very unique. We don't give it to just anybody. I mean, you really got to earn it, and you have to have a special place in our heart. So good job there.
Well, yes, it means a lot. I really appreciate the distinction.
I think when I was in the White House the other day, I even said that. I said, when are we getting the Hogster on? And I said that to Mercedes, and she's like, I love that nickname. It fits him so perfect. So I just spread the word.
That's great.
Okay, Hogan.
All right, we'll work to make it stick. It's all about branding here.
That's right.
We'll see what we can do.
Got to get the Hogster with his own brand in the White House. So, look, the vote coming up in the Senate on the National Emergency Act. I mean, in reality, Hogan, this is a symbolic vote because they don't have 2/3 to override the president's veto. So a couple of Republicans vote one way or the other. Who cares? President vetoes it, and then it'll be decided in SCOTUS anyway. So why all the effort going into this vote in the Senate today? Why does it matter?
Well, it looks like political posturing from the left. That's nothing new. We all understand that's the way they operate. They put politics over people's lives consistently and with reckless abandon. And this instance is something where, it's a crisis on the border. We had a briefing yesterday in which the president sat down and talked to the press and talked to law enforcement along the border who said, look, the drugs are coming in now at unstoppable movements. The poundages that we're receiving coming into this country has never been seen before. Enough fentanyl seized last year to kill every man, woman, and child in this country, and it's almost as though the Democrats refuse to acknowledge the drug issue that's killing and ravaging American communities. They refuse to acknowledge the child endangerment, the child smuggling that's going on when cartels, kidnap children or parents get paid off in countries of origin to take their children and use them because they know it gets them in this country. It looks like Democrats ignore the abuse and rape and assaults that occur to women who make these dangerous journeys north. And their solution to it is open borders, and let's make illegal immigration just legal. Let's just make everything legal now. So it incentivizes the most dangerous, deplorable behavior on the planet, and Democrats are fine embracing that. It is a vote today against the president's measure is a vote against the American people. It's against the safety and security of our communities. And for the life of me, I just cannot figure out why they have taken this position.
I've asked this question to a number of people. I'm going to ask you also. What is driving this obsession with protecting illegal immigrants and encouraging them to come across the border illegally and then to protect them at the expense of you as citizens for the Democrats? What's driving this obsession?
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously that's a question for them, but I mean, it's hundreds of billions of dollars we spend on this, every year, just monetarily. But that doesn't even touch the humanitarian crisis, which I talked about just before. But I do think there are a few things that have changed, and you and I have discussed this on the program. But look, Barack Obama called this a humanitarian crisis in 2014. So it wasn't manufactured, quote unquote, then. Democrats took it seriously then. They took the border seriously when they voted for it, or at least they pretended to when they voted for it in 2006 and 2013. So a few things have changed, and I think that's the impetus for the change in Democrat behavior. One is the problem's just gotten worse. Two is I think people are coming into this country, and they think, as the Democrat Party, if they can just legalize everyone who comes here and just push for open borders, that they'll be seen as the party that is the logical landing spot for all of these new voters, all these 20 million plus new voters that come to this country. They think they can take take hold of that massive voting bloc and then gain power. So it's all about power for Democrats. Right. And then thirdly is it's political in nature, because now that Donald Trump's in the White House, they reject everything he does, even if it's something they used to stand for or something they claim to support in the past. It all has to do with politics and power with the Democrats, and it's no more obvious than in this vote today.
Why are you losing? You're going to lose what we have seen, a number of Republican senators that are going to pass the resolution rebuking the president. Why are you losing those Republicans, Hogan?
Again, I'm not entirely sure. Most of them are saying they're doing it on procedural grounds. They agree with the national emergency. Right. They agree he has the constitutional right to do it. They agree there's even a crisis at the border. And look, they don't want to vote for this. I completely understand, because they're shell-shocked. After the last 8 years of Barack Obama, abusing the executive branch with a cell phone and a pen. Everyone remembers those famous comments by President Obama. So I understand that a lot of Republicans are leery of the executive branch. But let's be honest here. What the president is doing is he's using powers granted by Congress to enforce laws passed by Congress. So all of the things he's doing in this national emergency were powers that the Congress granted the executive branch. And of course, as we mentioned before, you can hem and haw and feign outrage all you want to about policing our borders, protecting the American people, but you passed those laws, Congress.
Right.
And the last administration, Barack Obama, refused to enforce those laws. He just said he turned a blind eye, instructed Eric Holder to do that on many occasions, much less up to and including this.
Right.
And this president said, no, my job by the Constitution is to enforce the laws. If you don't like the laws, Congress, change them.
Exactly.
That's fine. But they haven't changed them in 40 years, and so we've got an issue down there where we're dealing with laws on the books, for a year 2000 problem, but it's a much different situation. The dynamic is much more dangerous. It's much more perilous, and they won't change the laws to protect our people, and that's a shame.
Well, and when they do change the laws, they want to punish American citizens while giving more rights to illegal aliens, which is it just defies all logic, Hogan. The best example is I'm a U.S. citizen. If I go to a gun show this weekend in Northern Virginia or outside of Washington, D.C., and I try to buy a gun, they want to stop me from being able to buy it. They want me to go through all kinds of background checks and everything else. If I just want to buy a gun off the table there or trade it, yet what they're saying is if an illegal alien who's here illegally buys a gun, it shouldn't be reported to ICE. So they've got more rights than I do. How the hell does that make any sense, Hogan?
Yeah, that's an incredible example, and I was going to use it too. And I'll give you another one that also defies logic. If a mother comes to the border and drops off her child onto U.S. soil, that child is given rights and privileges that some of our own citizens don't have, because the Democrat Party also stands for a child who's born gets to be put off to the side while the parents decide with the doctor whether they allow the child to live or not. So a child coming into this country from a foreign land almost has more rights than a child who's born here, who can be put to death, murdered, as soon as they're out of the mother's womb. That right there should be, should spawn such outrage across this country, and quite frankly, it should embarrass the Democrat Party to understand that they're giving more rights and privileges to people who have no right to be here. That's what's so incredible in this situation. It's
really sick. That's all I can say. The whole obsession of the Democrats with illegals is beyond the pale of any reason, or as Denver Riggleman says, has crossed the Rubicon to idiocy. Yeah. This is a great line. All right, I've got a clip here from President Obama you mentioned that we've got up. I just want to get your reaction to that. You spurred our creativity here, the Hogster. Go ahead. Yeah, it's not playing. All right, we're going to have to skip that. Hogan, sorry about that. We're with Hogan Gidley. He's the deputy. He's a deputy press secretary for President Trump at the White House. Hogan, just yesterday, there was a 24-year-old transient illegal immigrant who was arrested in connection with the brutal slaying of a 59-year-old woman in South San Jose last month. He was an undocumented immigrant with a long criminal history. When does this stop? When do people realize this has to stop?
These deaths are needless, they're senseless, and they're 100% preventable. We have our own crime in this country. We shouldn't have to sanction and import more. I'm still waiting for the Democrats in California, up to and including the Speaker of the House, to make a comment, tweet, our prayers are with the family, we're sorry about this, to the police officer who was shot and killed, who was a legal immigrant, shot and killed by an illegal immigrant.
Right.
Now, this case you're mentioning today, something else. Mm-hmm. I'm waiting for the representation from the great state of California to make just the simplest of comments mm-hmm. to the family mm-hmm. or to the people that you guys deserve protection. We're looking into this. Our prayers are with you. Our thoughts are with you. Something. But they don't want to acknowledge it. At the very least, you think they'd be outraged and say, how are these... The gun usage is bad. The mm-hmm. problem is, if they start talking about the gun usage, you're going to have to go down the road of why do they have a gun in the first place if they're here illegally, and then it opens up the Pandora's box that they don't want opened. So it's going to continue until the American people put pressure on some of these Democrats who continue to buck the desires, the wants, and quite frankly the needs as it relates to protection of the American people. They've got to understand this is a serious problem, and it's time for a serious solution. The politics of the past will not fix this problem. This ridiculous idea that we're just to let everyone who wants to come into this country without any vetting system whatsoever is basically what they're asking us to do, and that's just untenable for a myriad of reasons. But at its simplest boiled down point, you have to protect the American people first. We let in 1.1 million people coming into this country legally every year. So it's ridiculous to pretend as though we're some harsh nation. We are the most compassionate nation on the globe. And for them to pretend otherwise is just disingenuous. They have to begin to understand the American people deserve protection.
They care. As you said earlier, this is all about power in perpetuity, generational power for the Democrats in turning every illegal that comes into the United States, somehow turning them into voters. Like, this is real. I mean, we saw it, Texas said they identified 98,000 illegal immigrants on their voting rolls in Texas that could have went and voted in any federal election. It's 100,000. I mean, that could swing a state election. That can swing congressional districts. That can swing a Senate seat. That's 100,000 people. Illegals voting in Texas. That's just what they found, right? So you don't even know what other states this exists in. The whole thing is ridiculous, but they are obsessed with it, and that's what you say, it's over power. All right, let's get to yesterday. The Senate voting. Hogan Gidley with us, the Deputy Press Secretary for President Trump at the White House live. Hogan, yesterday the Senate rebuking the president in our continued aid for the Saudis and the Yemeni civil war, aiding the Saudi Emirates coalition in Yemen that we first got there. Obama got us involved in that, President Obama, to placate the Saudis when he made the deal with Iran. But here it is 2 years later, or 4 years later, we're still there. The president campaigned on getting out of these foreign entanglements. So why is it that the Senate had to try to get us out, and why hasn't the president just followed through on a campaign promise and got us the hell out of there?
Well, he's been doing that. I mean, this is something that, as you said, he ran on. He's pointed this out many times. There are a lot of senators, as you know, who've rejected the president's ideas on the region. He wants to end these endless, quote-unquote, endless wars, as he pointed out on a myriad of occasions. But there is some resistance out there to people who want to keep us in these foreign entanglements, and the president was clear. Listen, we've got to keep things stable, and that's fine. He's willing to do that. He's willing to make sure that we, protect our partners and allies around the world. But he also has asked other countries to step up and to do their part, whether it's a trade deal where he wants them to pay their fair share, or whether it's the UN where or NATO where he wants them to pay their fair share. This is a similar idea the president has had, which is we understand these regions are dangerous, but we need other countries to step up as well. We're not going to be the world's piggy bank, and we're not going to be the world's police force. The president was clear about that, and he's doing that. He's pulling people out of Syria, as you mentioned. The caliphate in the territory is basically defeated, and the proposal you just mentioned, the same goes for that. But for whatever reason, we do face some on our side who just refused to stand with the president on this, even though he ran on that promise and won on it. Mm-hmm. So theoretically, they should line up with the president here. But again, we face a lot of headwinds whenever the president tries to make any move. Sometimes it's from our own side. Well,
you're right. I mean, it's just the people you've still got the neocons and the never Trumpers running around that want us involved policing the world. So you have to deal with that. Let's get to politics for just 1 second. As a spokesperson, deputy spokesperson for the president, Beto O'Rourke getting in the race this morning, just a couple minutes hours before you came on. He has a record of zero accomplishment as a congressman. Zero. He's done nothing, right? Hasn't passed a bill, done nothing. And he got beat by Ted Cruz, obviously. Is there a sense in the White House looking forward to 2020? And I know you can't get into politics, but just the surface on it. Is there a sense that whoever the nominee is, that the difference here going into 2020 is going to be very stark?
Absolutely. First of all, I hate to do this on your show, but I need to correct you. It's not Beto. It's not Beto. It's not Beto. It's Robert Francis. Call him by his name, please. That's the way you pronounce it. It's Robert Francis is his name, number one. Number two, I think the stark differences here between parties will be made even more evident. This Democrat Party today, with these fresh faces coming in, and with Nancy Pelosi at the helm, is now, articulated what they're for. One of those things is to make America a socialist country. That's paramount to their politics, number one. Number two, they have decided that it is okay now to give birth to a child and then decide whether or not to murder that child. That's number two. And number three is they'd like to destroy the economy by pushing a Green New Deal that would pay people who are unwilling to work, that would get rid of cows, get rid of cars, get rid of planes. Now, keep in mind, it's fine if Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez wants to use plastic bags, fly on planes, because that's the world we live in. Heaven forbid she try to change it and do something and lead by example. She's going to, live by her rules. You have to live by the rules she wants you to live by, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I want to say raise taxes, but I think you and I talked about before, as you're looking at the list of things Democrats have now sided with, raising your taxes, while bad enough, almost seems to pale in comparison to the three things I just mentioned that are so egregious and would be so damaging to the future of this country. It's almost not even worth saying at this point.
It's the interview that somebody quoted the other day, and I just have to go over this again because the hypocrisy becomes laughable. She's flying, she says, banned planes, yet she flies from Washington, D.C. to LaGuardia in New York instead of taking Amtrak, which is actually faster because you can take the tunnel from Congress right to Union Station, get on Amtrak as Acela, be in your district in 2.5 hours. It takes over 3 hours to get through security and everything, and then take a cab from LaGuardia and everything else. So you actually get there faster if she took Amtrak, but I guess she likes flying on the first class plane or something. This is the gift that doesn't stop giving.
Not to mention the subway is just blocks from her place in New York, and instead, or just feet from her place in New York, and they chose Uber so many other times. She and her staff. So the hypocrisy is just ridiculous. And then for her, when confronted, as you just said, to say, "No, I get to do it," that's just the world we live in. Well, no, wait a minute. The world we live in also allows you to bring non-plastic bags into the grocery store, recyclable bags, and just use those. The world we live in also allows you to use a train from New York to D.C., but that's not her world. She wants you living in that confined, constrained, unicorns, gumdrops, and rainbows utopia that she envisions that would absolutely destroy the American economy and ruin people, quite frankly, in poverty across this world who rely on fossil fuels to live. So, she's going to be continued on as the champion of the left, but I think over time people are going to understand and begin to realize she, like most Democrats, have no idea what they're talking about as it relates to the environment.
We're out of time. We want to thank Hogan Gidley for being with us, the Hogster, Deputy White House Press Secretary to President Trump. Hogan, thanks